The side chop technique. Side chopping must always go against the spin. Do you know what going against means? It's essentially using the same side. Only when it's on the same side can you perform a side chop. If it's not, you can still chop it, but it's very challenging, and the resulting shot won't have much spin. For example, when playing with someone who is also right-handed, when they loop with their forehand, or when a left-hander loops with their backhand, these types of shots are usually good for side chopping. This kind of feeling, just loop as usual. As long as it has a bit of right side spin, you can do a side chop. See that? That's skill. Two perfect executions. As long as you against the spin and find the bounce point, you can chop at the rising point or peak point, but it's very challenging. The bounce point is the easiest. The shot is still spinning here. The initial point is the best. If you can catch this point, no matter how much spin is on the loop, you can chop it for successful shots in a row. Isn't that skill? Watch closely. I'll show you an even harder one, where the shot bounces up. Side chopping is most difficult. If you can catch the bounce point, it's relatively easy, but once it bounces higher, it requires something more. You'll need a good feel in your hand. Loop it a bit slower. Add more spin. This one's too high. That one's good. This is much harder than catching the bounce point, because you can't borrow any power from the shot. So if you really want to use this technique, you must catch the rise point. It has to be the same side rotation. He hasn't missed a shot. I didn't miss this shot even when I was 10. See? This is what we call showing off. This is showing off with skills, you know. This kind of shot is something we practice daily when young. Nice. Everyone's curious about the side chop, right? Or the backhand wipe technique? So I'll take a couple of minutes to explain it casually for you. You can just listen and try it out. You can play around with it, but this technique is not really practical in matches. For most players, you need to reach a high level of basic skills or solid fundamentals to make it work. I also use this technique in matches. You've probably seen Kokiniwa's side chops or Malong's side chops.
那现在马龙也是在落后的情况下开始追分，切了一板，哇，这球真转啊！
In our matches, we handle many shots like this. Let me explain when to use it. Sometimes when the opponent loops to you on what you thought was the forehand side, it turns into a slow loop to your backhand. So when you can't defend such a shot, you instinctively use this move. For example, if I run to my forehand, I naturally go for the side chop. It's an instinctive switch up. No errors. As long as you catch the point, it won't miss. This shot has intense spin. But look, if it's a backhand wipe, then the spin needs to be opposite. The rotation has to be aligned against it. Do you know how to execute this? You have to hit at a later timing. Too early and it won't work. Actually, it's possible. I'll demonstrate. Right? This can be done at the peak point. But if it's a forward spin situation, it's not as good when done early, because you can't use the force, right? Wow. Did you all learn this technique? How to switch to a straight shot. This one really jumps up. This shot, when it goes over, it curves that way. It's hard for the opponent to return. For example, when the opponent loops or backhand flicks, he follows with a wipe like this. This shot is really tough to handle. And even if the opponent manages to get there, meanwhile, Malong is already waiting at the forehand side. It's hard to switch to a straight shot. And Malong is ready to attack powerfully and score. His playstyle involves a set of combo techniques. It's not just about showing off. Exactly, Malong often plays this way. When he wipes the shot over, the opponent's return will likely be a forehand shot. and then he's already waiting for you here. For players at their level, using these two techniques in a match makes it very uncomfortable for the opponent, because if you don't specifically practice against it, the techniques you usually practice won't prepare you well when you encounter players who play with unconventional strategies. For example, the side chop I mentioned earlier, it can actually be quite tricky because you don't train for this type of spin or this kind of rhythm frequently. By joining my membership, you can watch more than 10 videos in advance and access 30 professional tutorial videos by Fangbo. These videos cover everything from beginner basics to advanced techniques,
because it's possible for him to push it to your forehand area,
ensuring you'll find the skills you need. The cost ranges from $1 to $3, depending on your region. Thank you all for your support.